what impact do you see coming from the IMO 2020 fuel regulations?
Well, it's a potentially huge a moment for the industry. So January 1, 2020, there is a cap on sulfur content of fuel. What our analysts at IHS Markit believe is that there's going to be a time when low sulfur fuel, which is what the ships are going to have to use, is going to be significantly more expensive than the regular fuel that they're using today. So the container carriers are going to have a much higher fuel bill for a certain period of time after January 1, 2020. The question is what's going to happen. The container carriers have a very spotty record of passing on increases in fuel costs to their customers. So they will, of course, try to go out to the market and ask customers to pay them for to essentially reimburse them for the extra cost of the low sulfur fuel. But the likelihood is that they're not going to recoup all of the added costs, as they have not recouped the added cost from prior increases in regular fuel prices, like what's happened over the past year, for example, where regular fuel costs have gone up 50%, and the carriers' earnings took a dive this year because they were not able to pass on those added costs. So one of the things that could happen, and this was discussed at our Container Trade Europe conference in Hamburg in September, was that the carriers might end up slowing down their entire fleets, because they will slow down by several knots. As a result of that, they will need more ships to complete weekly sailings. That will absorb capacity, and it could result in a situation where capacity can get really tight depending on demand. Now, demand could be much weaker because there could be contagion in emerging markets. The U.S.-China trade war could significantly impact trade volumes. So we do not know what the impact of demand is going to be, but we do know that there's going to be a much higher cost for the carriers of fuel, and somehow that's going to have to play itself out.
Can you speak about the Maersk Damco announcement?
Yeah, so Maersk made a significant announcement, which was that they're going to break up their freight forwarding business, Damco, into two pieces. One of those pieces involves origin logistics and deconsolidation logistics, essentially the pieces of the business that went way back to the Sealand days. Those businesses are going to get put into Maersk proper. So there's going to be no Maersk Logistics. There's going to be simply Maersk. But what we know of as Maersk today offers only ocean services. But the Maersk of January 1, 2019 is going to literally incorporate logistics capabilities into a core offering. And the industry has never seen this for many, many years. Meanwhile, the traditional freight forwarding business of Damco is going to be kept under the Damco name, and is going to be located way outside of, or in a completely different place from Copenhagen. It's going to be located in the Netherlands, and there's going to be a very long arm's length relationship between Maersk and that business, which needs to be neutral as it relates to carriers in order to be able to adequately serve its customers. And so forwarders naturally are wondering what this means for their business. Maersk has insisted that by incorporating traditional logistics capabilities into a core ocean offering, they are not declaring war on freight forwarders. They feel that they can coexist with freight forwarders, that freight forwarders have something to offer the market, Maersk has something to offer the market. And the head of Maersk in Europe, Carsten Kildal, who spoke at our Europe conference in Hamburg, said that he does not anticipate over the next 5 years that the percent of cargo that Maersk receives from freight forwarders versus directly from BCOs, that is corporate companies, is going to be any different from today. So it's a development that was just announced, and it has yet to play out, but it's certainly making the industry much more interesting than it was.
Your column talks about communication and industry standards, increased industry standardization. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between ports in that way?
Yeah, so essentially, one of the things that we're seeing in the container world is that individual seaports are building up very sophisticated digital capabilities. The Port of Rotterdam, the Port of Antwerp, Hamburg, Los Angeles, Shanghai, ports literally all around the world are building, sometimes they're called port community systems, that are really very much trying to optimize cargo flows within their facilities. What we have seen very little of is connectivity between these. And that's not because they don't want to communicate, but because they don't communicate, the value of the created through digitization in this case is really occurring within the four walls of a port rather than being connected to the end-to-end movement of the container. And so what gets optimized is the port environment, but not the end-to-end flow of trade or the end-to-end supply chain of the Walmart or the Tesco or whoever it is. And one of the reasons why this is happening is that while the container itself was one of the great standards of world history when it was settled on a 40-foot steel container would be the primary mode for the movement of most of international trade. That was a great breakthrough when everybody could agree that it's a 40-foot container that would move on trains, move on trucks, move on ships. The data around this has not been standardized even today, which is now, of course, 2018. However, there is a major effort underway, which was largely funded by the EU, to standardize, ETA. What is an ETA, estimated time of arrival, on a ship? Well, there's 25 different definitions of that. How can the industry settle on one definition for ETA? And if all of these different definitions can be standardized, where the definition is standardized and the means of transmitting it between parties is standardized, that is going to, I think, is a whole nother level of value creation in the international containerized supply chain that could potentially be achieved.
Well, thanks for taking time to sit down with me.
My pleasure.